Hello and welcome back to another torch review. Today I have the Rofis KR20 tactical LED torch in for testing. Now this was sent to me by Rofis, but I'll give you an overview of the areas that I like and dislike about the torch. What I've done is laid out all the items here on the desk so you can see. We're moving a bit closer in a minute. On the front of the packaging you'll see there is a 5-year warranty with this. They've increased their warranty terms on their recent torches. We have 1100 lumens output. On this side, not too much to see, just some pictures of the torch, and on the other side we have a bit more detail. We have a maximum distance of 336 meters. Pay attention to the intensity. That's the candela rating. The higher the number, and this is quite high, the more intense the area of the beam is, the brightest part that measures. On the back we have some more specs and information. We have a built-in USB charging port, and it's also using the Cree XPL High V3 LED. Onto the instructions, we can see the features are laid out in this section. As you'd expect, the Type 3 anodized body, we have waterproof, IPX8 submersion, and this lists out the accessories and the batteries that you can use. Usually the 18650, which is included, but you can also use the CR123A cells. Now onto the run times, we have a total of 6 power modes and 3 strobe modes. You'll have an estimation of the power output there and the run times. And this goes into the details onto the settings. We have 2 switches on this. We have a mechanical tail switch, and we also have an electronic side switch too. And onto the charging functions, built-in micro USB charging port. Included are 2 extra O-rings, and you also get a spare USB port cover and a tail cap cover too. Notice the Rofis logo on the tail cap cover. That's unusual to get both of these covers in a pack. And onto the hand strap, decent quality, and you have a slimline adjuster as well, so you can tighten that up. Onto the micro USB cable, this is braided and it has metal tips. It's also branded with the company's name as well. Looking at the holster that's supplied, this is a good quality holster. You have some padding inside with elasticated sides, and on the back a metal D-ring and a belt loop section too. You can pull this open, and it has a small Velcro patch near there as well, just to help you find the popper hole. Just showing you now fitting the torch to the holster. As you'd expect, it's a good fit. It's custom designed for this torch by the maker. You might have to rotate the side clip around a little bit though, depending on how you position that. And moving in closer to look at the torch body, this is a satin finish, but it's closer to matte. There's a slight sheen off of it. I quite like the finishing on this. You've got quite a lot of fine knurling as well on the barrel section, which provides a good bit of grip for you too. It's a nice wide part onto the side clip. Looking at the head section, we have a raised button. This looks the same as other Rofis torches, but it requires more pressure to push down, so you won't accidentally change power outputs or modes with that side button. Opening the side USB port cover now. And you can unscrew the top section of the head and remove that. There is a spring on that, and there is one in the tail cap as well. These springs are both gold plated, so you shouldn't have any connection problems with the battery. And looking at the tail cap section, the cover here, unscrewing the bottom part, we'll see that the threads are square. This helps avoid any cross-threading or damage to that. You also have 2 attachment holes for the strap, as well as one on the tactical ring. Onto the LED, very well known one. This features in a lot of the Rofis torches, the XPL High V3. We have a smooth reflector too. It's also the same LED in the Claris XT11S torch. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up. Note the bezel is stainless steel and it's polished, so that should have an effect on the beam pattern. We'll have a look at that later on. Unscrewing the tactical ring here. I quite like the fact that you can screw that on or take it off and it locks into place firmly. That was something which annoyed me on a few torches that I've had at the loose tactical ring. Now the threads will show when you've screwed the tail cap back on, but that's not something that would particularly bother me. The fact that you can lock it in place is more important, or if you wish, have it freely rotate around. Next up is the battery. This tested in pretty much around the specification. It's a protected cell and it's Rofis branded. All of the cells that I've tested of this type have come in around about that figure. There is a slight variation sometimes. And it's showing you the tactical ring here. When you unscrew that, loosen that off, or you can tighten it up. They've done the tactical ring right on this torch. I don't like it when the ring flaps around and moves. I personally prefer it to be locked into position. Now when you power on the torch, you will get an LED indicator showing you if the battery capacity is full, or if it's below 50% it will be red. You have momentary on, just half press the button, and if you double press the tail switch you will get the strobe mode. And then you can fully lock in whichever mode you particularly want to use. And when the torch is on, simply press the side button and you can cycle through the 5 available power modes. As I've said, you need to push the switch a bit more, but I'm okay with that because it avoids accidentally changing the setting. It's also a pretty good grip with this, even with the gloves on, and you can push and hold in to access the strobe mode from the side switch. So you have 2 methods to access the strobe, either from the tail cap switch or the side switch. And you can long press to cycle through the 3 modes that are available. We have the standard beacon mode, SOS, and there's a fast rapid flashing strobe mode too. We'll do some shots of those outside so you can see what they look like. Now if you want to enter the moonlight mode, you press the tail cap switch in combination with the side switch to enter into that. I'm just zooming in a bit closer now on the side switch so you can see the pressure that you need to turn this on, and it is a fair amount, and I'm okay with that because I'd rather you have to actually fully push it rather than accidentally half press it. There's no way you will be able to accidentally change settings on this torch. It's pretty much foolproof in that regard. They've done a good job with the user interface. Now onto the clip. You can remove this if you don't want. I prefer to have them on myself, but you can rotate it around to suit the position that you want. Due to the shape of the stainless steel bezel, you'll be able to see if you have the torch on and you've put it down on its head. It also acts as a self-defense weapon if you wish, and it's pretty stable, tail standing too. Not all the tactical torches that I've tried have that ability to tail stand properly, and it also has anti-rolling. This has also helped with the shape of the body and the tactical ring, which can be locked in place, so it's not really going to roll around at all. Now unscrewing the bottom when the torch is on isn't going to disable the power. You'll have to completely take it off almost to have any effect, but you can slightly twist the top head to turn off. You're not going to need to really do this because it's a mechanical bottom switch, so it's not going to draw any power at all once it's off. Now when the power gets low with the torch, you'll see the red LED coming on and it will start flashing, and you won't be able to use the higher mode's power output on the torch, so it will step down. So I've plugged it into charge. That green indicator will turn to red. Once you use the tail switch, you have to engage that to charge it, and you'll see the charging coming up on the amp meter here. Now once that's finished, the LED turns to green. The highest speeds I got off this were about 0.85 of an amp charging. Waterproof test now. This can operate underwater as well. It's IPX8 rated. I left this in water for about half an hour, no problems at all, as I would expect, fully weather sealed. Onto the beam shot inside, you can see a bright central area as expected. It's quite a lot brighter than the rest of the image, but it does expand it out a bit. You can see a few areas of illumination in that. Onto the moonlight mode, I have it here at the lowest setting, which is around about 4 lumens, so it's rated at, and I'm stepping up to the ultra low setting, so you can see the difference between the two, and there is a reasonable difference. And outside, again, I'll do the same thing. I perhaps would have gone maybe to 1 or 2 lumens for the ultra low, but it's a bit lower than some torches I've used. Onto the strobe now. This is the standard flashing, rapid and slower. Then onto the SOS. And lastly, you have a beacon mode. Rofis have this well covered, just about as good as anybody does for the strobe modes. Whatever you fancy, they have it here, and I quite like that. It's just a small thing, but it's quite nice. The anti-loss is useful if you lose it, but it's also going to tell you that you have the torch in standby mode, so it's off on the electronic switch, and you might want to turn it off on the mechanical one. So that's a useful indicator to have, not just a gimmicky feature. Now outside, this is my standard test that I'm doing, wide angle, same position as the other tests, and I'm stepping through the power modes. We have 6 in total. And you can see when you get up to the high levels, it really spreads out the beam a fair amount. You get quite good peripheral vision with this, even though you have a very bright central spot. And that's not always the case with all of the tactical torches that I've looked at. Onto my further range tree test. This is about 35-40 foot away, and I'm ramping up through the power settings. You can see once you get up to the high, medium and high, you're really outputting quite a nice power, concentrated power in that area, but it's also covering a fairly decent width too. This is an alternative angle. I'm doing quite a lot of beam shots with this torch to show you how it looks, because they're all slightly different. And ramping up to the top power settings. The tint on this is cool, but it's not as cool as some torches that I've seen, so I quite like the tint. That's a personal preference. It's not too cool for me. Some of them have been a bit on the cold side, but this one is quite neutral almost. And then wandering around, even in the medium setting, you'll find the illumination is pretty good, but once you start ramping it up, you can fill in the width of the image with the light. Now I'm comparing the torch at a distance of around about 100 foot on the KR20, and then stepping up through the power levels. So you can see we have the bright spot in the middle, and it is pretty bright. That's in line with the candela rating. This is designed more for range than it is for spread, but you still get a pretty good spread, better than some of the torches that I've used once you're at the higher power level settings. So I quite like the beam on this torch more than I would do with most tactical torches. Now onto the Rofis KR10. This is more of an EDC type torch. You can see the spread of the beam is more evenly distributed. It's still brighter in the middle, but it's got a wider angle and it illuminates the edges a bit more than the KR20 does. And lastly, I'm going to go on to the Olight S1R. This is a completely different type of torch, but it shows you what a flood type light looks like. All three light effects are quite different. It's really down to your own personal taste what you want. If you want something in between, the KR10 would be something to go for, but the tactical lights tend to have a more focused beam, so that can appeal to you if you need to use them at longer distances. This is the close range beam test, and you can see again the same pattern is repeated with a very bright spot in the middle. That's that intensity, that's where the range comes from. But you can also see the spread. It's not quite as wide as some of the EDC torches, but you'll see here when I ramp up the power how that the inner circle, the brighter circle, expands out once you increase the power level. And then I'll move up to the roof section so you can see the illumination on that. So you've got that bright spotlight effect, but you also have a pretty good illumination on the outside too. And that's what's impressed me more with this torch more than some other ones, is that I don't particularly like a closely focused beam if you sacrifice the peripheral and side illumination too. Now comparing this to the Claris XT11S is quite natural because both torches share the same LED, and they are also both tactical torches, very similar in design, although there are some differences. The Claris I've used for a number of months and it has a nice third switch, the tail switch, which has a paddle on it, and that's quite useful for getting access to turbo, or you can program it for other functions, and I liked that, as well as the 3-level power indicator. The downside was that you couldn't really tail stand the Claris torches because they would fall over. They're not very stable, so that's perhaps not the end of the world for me, just having the 2 switches. I would have to say though, overall I prefer the KR20. That's because of a number of factors, but firstly the beam output I think is very good for a tactical torch. The XT11S was a bit too narrow and a bit too concentrated without as much spread as the Rofis, and I believe that's partly down to the stainless steel polished bezel, which is probably helping with the light output. I do prefer it by some margin over that torch. You also have 6 power levels, 3 SOS modes. You have a couple of centimeters less in size than the Claris torch, and I think the extensive bundle, including the spare end cap and USB cover, also helps swing things. Lastly, the attractive price point. This is a fair bit cheaper from the places that I've looked at than the XT11S, and I think overall it's a better buy. On the downside, I would prefer slightly faster in-torch charging. It's just a touch under some other torches that I've tested, and that instant access to turbo would be useful. Overall though, it's a very strong torch and one of the best tactical ones that I've tested to date. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you find these videos useful. I'll be doing more torch reviews, and if you have any questions and comments, please leave them below. Thanks very much for watching.